welcome to the very first episode of our new podcast. I'm Karan Georgiuman.
And I'm Yuvan, and we're absolutely thrilled to get the ball rolling with this pilot episode. Welcome to Youth Unhinged, a podcast where we explore the entry into adulthood the right way, in theory at least. You see, when Crazy Jen hit us in the face, we both sat down and decided to talk about it. Let's start with this.
Hey, Karan here. I'll be starting my undergraduate course very soon.
Yuvan here. I'm currently in Korea doing a pre-university course.
Now, we are your typical millennials looking at all sorts of things and interests that have, the potential to enhance both ourselves and our skill sets. So as such, things like financial literacy, technology at work, and even learning languages, general knowledge, history, and the like, all of which we plan on discussing in upcoming episodes, naturally is of interest to us, as we hope it is to you, our listeners, as well, especially if you are as confused as we are. So to all the youth out there, this podcast is one that will give you good, solid advice on tried and tested methods that will lead you to immediate results. In this first episode of ours, we decided to talk about tech. So Ewan here, well, he got himself a laptop worth around $1,200 as a reward for his examination results. The one that landed him in Korea. So I always tease him. I go, hey, Ewan, add a few $100 and you've gotten yourself a piano, heck, a coffee machine. Ewan loves his coffee. So Ewan, let me ask you straight up. Are you happy with your laptop?
To be honest, I am happy with my laptop, given that I can play all the games I want in 200 FPS compared to my old laptop where I can only squeeze in maximum of 30 FPS. I would say it's a big difference. And given that my spec that I have right now is the perfect one for me, as much as I can game, I also can use it for other stuff like my general meetings, podcast editing and stuff. So I do think that it's a perfect one for me.
So when you were looking at the specs of your laptop, what is it in particular that you were looking for? What was your main target? What was the main function of your laptop supposed to be?
Okay, back then I was actually addicted to gaming, to be honest. So my main focus was about having the gaming to be smooth. So my first target was the processor. So I gotten myself the Intel Core i7, the overclocked version, and also RTX 2060, so I can play ray tracing graphics in my games as well. So that was my main focus that I was going for.
So gaming centered, and then when we talk about something that is meant for gaming, it generally handles all other tasks pretty well. And so how have you found it so far, being a student in Korea and having such a powerful device on your hands? Has it given you any problems so far? Are you satisfied with the amount that you paid? $1,200 is not a small amount by any means.
I do think that it is quite troublesome if I'm planning to bring it to somewhere else, given that my PC is already 2.75 kg. So if I'm going to bring it somewhere else, it is quite troublesome. But if I'm going to sit in my own room and doing my stuff, it's perfectly all right. And besides
Fine. So how did you get it?
You mean how did I bought it?
Yeah, you got it online or?
No, I bought it at a shop back in Malaysia.
Right.
From the official distributor of ROG.
I see. Well, the CPU, we were talking about the CPU just a second ago. So the CPU is a key component in making sure everything runs smoothly. The problem is that for some reason, everyone gives so much credit to RAM. It's almost insane. I've got no problem with the random access memory being all important, but it has to be noted that random access memory is very upgradable over the years, so long as your laptop has got an extra slot. Even if it doesn't have an extra slot, the RAM stick that you have, it's generally not soldered on to your motherboard, so that means that you can potentially swap it down the road for something that's bigger. And even most laptops have an extra RAM slot. So the chances of you coming across a laptop that doesn't have an extra RAM slot, that itself is going to be a problem.
But yeah, because nowadays many people do think that RAM is much more important than the CPU. I do agree with that, because they don't know that CPU is the main component compared to the RAM. Especially
Exactly.
That's true. So right. Because when you're talking about CPU, the name itself is already central processing unit. If you don't have the central processing unit, other stuffs are not going to perform as much as they can. You can't release the maximum potential of the component. So I do think that CPU is much more important in that sense. So people that always say that RAM is more important, if you got a laptop, just go for a higher RAM, or if you want to buy a laptop, go for the one that got a higher RAM. It absolutely doesn't make sense, given that they should be giving more attention to the CPU itself in the first place.
Yes, and CPUs are soldered on as well, right? So you can't just swap out a CPU when you suddenly decide, oh, my laptop isn't up to task anymore. It's not doing the job as well as I expected it to do. It's you can't do that, and so you've wasted quite a bit of money, which if you possibly saved up uh, or held on to for maybe a month more or slightly longer than that, you would have gotten yourself something way better. Because
Yeah,
in terms of CPUs, right, you have very small price differences between a weak one and one that can potentially be very reasonable and very able to do your basic tasks. And most people don't realize that, unfortunately. It just goes over their heads, and then when they realize it, then it's too late.
yeah, it is true. Because talking about RAM, right, I think we should mention about another thing, which is the dual channel and single channel RAM. Because if you're really planning to change your RAM, as in you already bought your laptop without thinking properly about the performance of it, and you feel like RAM is the only solution you can go for, because as you said just now, the CPU is already soldered on the PC. The only possible customization that you can do to increase your performance in component wise, I would say it's the RAM, of course. So the dual channel, single channel, what it does is single channel, let's take a 8 gigabyte stick of RAM. You can put it as only one stick of 8 gigabyte, or you can put it two sticks, which is 4 gigabyte, and another one is also 4 gigabyte. Well, the research proved that the dual channel have better performance. So I think if you got no choice, then if you want to add your RAM, I think you better go for dual channel. But then, as we said just now, if you ever buy your laptop, do consider the CPU more than the RAM. It also
Yes.
brings you to another question, because you can upgrade your RAM if you have an extra RAM slot, as you said just now. But then, if you're not going for a much more expensive option, you can't get the extra RAM slot, because the cheaper the device that you're going to buy, the less customization ability that you will be able to get. So my question is, what do you think is too much? Like, where can you draw the line for you?
Well, I stop at the CPU actually, because you go any more than that, companies like HP, etc. They charge a lot for build quality and things like your panel, what sort of camera you have, things like that. And so I think if you are really on a budget, then the only thing that you have to look out for, as far as I'm concerned at least, is your CPU. But I know that for a fact that you have an opposing view to this. You pay attention to stuff like what kind of panel you get, what kind of screen you get on your laptop.
Yes, true. Because currently I'm having the 240 Hz and 3 millisecond response rate screen, which, as I said just now, more focused towards the gaming part. But now to think of it, I feel like I should get a better screen, in a sense that I should went for OLED or 4K panel instead, and still having like a solid refresh rate.
But that would mean a big bump in price. Am I right?
Actually, no, because currently the models out there, you can get like super high refresh rate with IPS screens, or you can get like OLED screens with slightly better refresh rate, around under 66, something like that, which I think is still way better than the 60 Hz. It will be much smoother. So yeah, it is a concern for me when I'm picking the one that I'm going to buy, because if you have a good CPU, you got a good GPU, and all the other specs are good, but then your screen can't enhance the image that is projecting, I think it's a waste as well. So what do you think about it?
Well, yeah, but agree with you to a certain extent. But what did you say what did you mean when you said that if you have a good CPU, you have a good GPU as well? So GPU, for those who aren't that computer inclined, that tech savvy, GPU stands for graphics processing unit, otherwise known as a graphics card. So that's what processes the graphics side of whatever visual that you see on your computer. So some laptops come with integrated graphics, which means that whatever graphical component that you see on your screen is being processed by your central processing unit as well. So there's nothing dedicated to be processed by, there's nothing dedicated for processing graphically demanding tasks. So if you have a graphics card, you've got something separate that's meant for the processing of visuals and stuff like that. And so it makes more sense to get a laptop with a CPU and also a dedicated GPU for whatever task it is that you want to accomplish, especially if you're doing something that's got to do with creative work, architecture, and the like. So yeah, back to my question: what did you mean by when you have a good CPU, you also have a good graphics card? What
Oh,
did you mean by
I
that?
mean, if you have a good GPU and also a good CPU, what I was trying to say that you need to have a better screen as well. I think it comes in a package. So if you're lacking any of the aspect, you won't be getting enough performance of it. But actually, since you already reminded me, talking about GPU, I think we should talk about our old laptops as well. Because both of us, I would say, we had a drastic change from our old laptop to our newer laptop. So how was
Very
your
true.
GPU back in your old laptop?
Integrated, integrated with an Intel Pentium processor. So I couldn't do anything. So things will lag like no one's business. You just can't have too many tabs open in Google Chrome. So let's start there. Once you've got too many things running, your computer starts hanging, and there you are stuck for maybe 5 minutes until until you maybe force shut down your laptop, force reset, or or do whatever that you can.
Did you play any games back then?
Well, I attempted playing FIFA, which
How is
which
it?
ran very very badly. So that was what FIFA 17, FIFA 18, and and so that's a football game, by the way, which nowadays tends to be slightly more graphically demanding, especially as yeah, as newer generations come off the game, newer variations of it come, it gets harder and harder to run. And so it was an absolute nightmare to run something like that. So and in fact, I think downloading the game already took up so much of
Oh
storage.
my god,
And
yeah.
yeah, and so when you have it running, that also basically chomps up half your memory, I think, half your random access memory. And so just having that game on your laptop and having extra platforms to download the game from, for example, Origin or Steam OS, right? One of those platforms that you download in order to download a game from one of those stores, it's already taking up a lot of random access memory. It's taking up your hard drive space. It's not, because games like this aren't small games. They are games that take maybe days to download, especially with my internet
Yeah, they
speed
are
at that time.
super huge.
Yeah, and so all of this essentially deteriorates the condition of your laptop. And just having too many apps, and in the first place, you don't necessarily have to open it. And this might sound like it doesn't make sense, but believe me, once you have too many apps already, it might feel like your laptop is already malfunctioning.
Yeah, you feel like you just want to throw away your laptop and just live like a stonish guy back then.
Eh, yeah, and also you feel that there's a lot of bloatware. So this comes with or without games. When you buy a new laptop itself, there are so many apps that keep running in the background. For example, McAfee. So both of us are very familiar with that name. So it comes free, and you don't realize it, but it actually tends to slow down your laptop, because while you've got other apps open, and while that app doesn't seem to be open, you haven't actually made an effort to open the app, that app is actually running in the background. And
Yep,
so the
yep.
same goes for platforms like Origin and Steam. They'll be updating in the background, and you potentially have no idea that it's happening. And so you see random cases where your laptop just hangs for no reason. You've got none of the apps open, but like I said, the very fact that those applications are there on your laptop is already a problem, especially when you've got something like a Pentium and 4 gigs of RAM, for example, which is what I had. No dedicated graphics card. And I think you might have been in a slightly better position than I was. What was yours like?
Yep, in the sense, I would say that I was in a better position because I was having at least a dedicated graphic card. I was having
There
the
you go.
NVIDIA, but then I'm not sure what exactly was the graphic card. I don't remember the model of it, but it was a
Yeah.
solid one. At least I can play Dota, the Defense of the Ancients game, at least in offline mode. That's the least I
Okay.
could do peacefully because if I'm going to join the online game, I need to play with other people. The maximum frame rate per second that I can get is less than 30. It's horrible. Every time
Less than
if
30.
yes, Every time if I need to activate an ability, I need to inform my friends like 5 seconds earlier so that they know that I'm going to use the ability, because the delay after that will be around 5 seconds.
Okay, so two things. First of all, that sucks. It doesn't sound good at all. So
Yes.
secondly, let's just try and put into perspective what less than 30 frames per second or less than 30 FPS means. So a good game, a AAA title, for example, one that is
Mm-hmm.
very graphically demanding, would be a game like what Call of Duty or Battlefield, a game that you actually can feel like you are in the game. It's like almost like a movie,
Yeah, it's very
and
immersive.
it's very immersive, very realistic. So games like that generally run smoothly at 60 frames per second. Now, if your computer is one that is super powerful like Yuvan's is, you potentially can run it at what, 80 frames per second, or can you get past the 100 frames per second barrier?
Depends on the game actually, but if it's like super demanding, I would put it that I can get around 80 to 90 for sure.
80 to 90. So now 80 to 90 is absolutely decent. You've got PS4 games running at around 60 frames per second. So now a game that runs 80 to 90 frames per second will have absolutely no problem on your laptop. And it will be, lagless, very smooth, no problems. And now 60 frames per second, like I said earlier, is
It's a
what your
solid one.
general gaming
Yeah.
console. Yeah, it's very solid. What a game console will handle, should be able to handle potentially for lighter titles. And then you've got heavier titles that run on consoles, such as again the PS4. I don't know, the PS5 is probably something better now, but since I'm relatively updated on what the PS4 can run. I haven't updated myself with specs and what the capabilities of the PS5 and
Mm-hmm.
Xbox. What's the
Yeah.
latest Xbox called?
Oh, actually, I also don't have
Yeah,
any
not
idea.
not not not
Mm.
in touch anymore. But it
I
doesn't
mean,
matter.
come on,
So
I
so
don't
let's
even like Xbox in the first place.
there we go. But it doesn't
Consoles
matter.
are
So
not good. Just play using your PC. You can have a better life.
we'll talk about that in a while for sure. Okay, we're getting back there now. Ewan's picked a bad bone there. Okay, but doesn't matter. We'll talk about that in a while. When we talk about the PS4, because the PS4 compared to the PS5, I wouldn't say there is much difference graphics wise. So the PS4 can run demanding games at 30 FPS. So that's the minimum frames per second that it will run. And whatever game that it runs on 30 FPS is locked at 30 FPS. So this means
Mm-hmm.
that you're running a very demanding title, a very demanding game, in other words, and the console that you have has essentially locked in your game to 30 FPS. So your game won't go any higher than 30 FPS, but at the same time, it won't go any lower than 30 FPS. And so now, any lower than 30 FPS, and you've got a problem. your
Yes.
Any lower than 30 FPS, 30 FPS is the boundary. 30 FPS means your game runs smoothly, maybe a slight lag when it comes to input and output. How responsive the game is towards what you're pressing, but your game isn't going to be choppy. But any lower than 30 FPS and your game starts getting incredibly laggy, choppy, so everything starts stuttering around. And like you said, you've got to start warning your friends 5 seconds before
Yeah.
before you before you start initiating an attack or whatever it is. So yours was running below 30 FPS.
Yep. I think I
And
never
so
hit more than 30. Like totally never.
so on a good day, you'll be running 30 FPS, which means what? No, hardly any choppiness, nothing like that. But I doubt that you even hit that often. So because it's got a maintaining 30 FPS is in itself a task.
Yep. It's a very
So
hard task for my old laptop.
yeah, and so you might get 30 FPS running for 1-2 seconds, and then suddenly you get a massive drop when suddenly someone decides to fire a rocket or something like that. Things that become more demanding. The next second it drops to 16 FPS, 25, and so it's something that fluctuates on and off. And so what I'm saying is matches up to what you experienced, I suppose.
Yes, true. Actually, what you said actually reminded me to the incident where my friend was playing this character which had like 6 or 7 abilities for Dota. And every time it's casting a spell, as in its new ability, my frame is totally gone. I can't look at my screen. I need to.
And there you go.
There's like a pause, like less like a literal pause on
There's a
the screen.
pause. And
Yes.
the next time the screen refreshes itself,
It's
you
already
see
like few.
something else
Yes.
completely.
It's like
Yeah,
10
yeah.
seconds,
Hey, what
15
happened?
seconds after.
It's like,
What
yeah,
happened? Oh, I'm
and
dead.
so
Okay, fine.
and so that leaves you wondering, what's the point of doing all of this in the first place? I mean, that's like the best part of the game, or that's the best part of whatever it is that you're doing.
Yeah. Because I think that is why when I want to buy my new laptop, I was focusing too much on getting a good gaming spec, which is till now I am happy with. But then that
Mhm.
brings me to another question. So when I want to buy my new laptop, obviously I did a lot of research, but I don't think many people are doing it right now. So do you think we are getting enough exposure to the current technology? Like they know what is going on in their life, what they should buy.
No, I think it's going on too fast. iPhone. We are at iPhone 13 already. Some
Oh
people are
yeah, you saw the
still
keynote the other
thinking that
day?
we are. No, I didn't actually. Did you?
I didn't. It was like 2 a.m. here and I was already knocked out the day before.
There we go. So I mean, who? But some people actually spend the time to watch, events like that, and yeah, some people still think that we had iPhone 10, and then when you tell them, hey, we had iPhone 13, they go, oh. So yeah, it's just expanding every day. It's getting bigger and bigger with new things on the horizon. We've already got proper folding devices that can be bought.
Yeah, how interesting it is. I never thought it was possible back then when I watched the videos, all the animated videos. It sounds so ridiculous. But now to see it in
Yeah,
real
isn't it?
life, wow.
Yeah, it is something else, really. And so for people who are not informed on these things, you don't have to keep that close of an eye, but some developments are just too big to miss. And so yeah, you must keep up to date with all of these things to a certain extent, but then once you keep putting your eye, or you keep prying in too deep, you yourself get confused. I mean, you've got other work to do at the same time. And when the
Yes.
time comes that you actually are interested in buying something, you find out, hey, I haven't been keeping track of this and this and this after all for so long, because I've had this and this to do. And so when the time comes eventually for you to make a decision on a certain product that you want to buy,
Mm-hmm.
then you essentially need to start from scratch. So insofar as your question goes, how much attention should you give to these kind of things? I think not too much. It's something that you must take with a pinch of salt. You don't have to be that enthusiastic about it, because eventually your interest is gonna dry out. And when the time comes, eventually you are, like most people, going to have to do reading up on the subject all over again, like as though you're a baby and you need to download all the information into your
Yeah,
head.
but then I think you'll get obsessed over it if you do it too much. Because back then, when I want to buy my new laptop, I was looking at all the laptops of my friends, of my classmate, batchmate. Whenever they bring out the laptop from their bag, my eyes will be on the laptop. I was that obsessed back then. I knew pretty much all the specs. I can name the laptop by just looking at the keyboard. But now, not anymore, because since I already
Completely
got my
gone.
laptop, yes. I wouldn't say completely gone. I still follow up, but not that obsessed anymore.
No, but what I mean is, like, you see, I if I ask you now, hey, I'm interested in buying a laptop, guess what? I don't know. You don't know, isn't it? And that is exactly what I mean. So what I'm saying is, the amount of attention that you need to give to these developments and trends is essentially the amount that you've given it right now. Because if
Yep.
you go any further than that, you're going to forget it next week. Or things are going to change next week to make things more confusing, because companies like Intel and all, they like to put everything under the Core i5 now. What used to be Pentium is now considered Core i5, but energy saving, things like
Mhm.
that, to put customers off the scent. And so what they're essentially saying is, the more money you spend, the better product that you get, the better CPU you will get, which isn't supposed to be the case. You should know exactly what you're getting for the amount of money that you're paying. And so when companies start putting, very subtle numbers, or that tend to, put customers off the scent of what's the best in terms of, you know, central processing units, and
Mm-hmm.
where exactly your central processing unit stands in comparison to all of
Yeah,
that.
totally understandable. But then, as you see, right, because manufacturers, their main goal is to make money, right, to make profit. That's their main goal,
Yeah.
anyways. So what they'll do is they want to put their highest spec, top tier specs, and make it as in a price that give profit to them. So I think that cause people to yearn for the best of the best. They want the best laptop out there. They want the best phone out there. They want the best PC out there. The best components they can find.
Which is
You
yeah,
think that
I
it's
know, I
okay?
think it's very understandable from the company's point of view. However, once you get one of the products that they are selling, you should remember that technology is one of these very unique fields where 2 years down the line, don't care how much you spend, you might have spent 20,000, maybe 4 years down the line, it becomes obsolete already.
Yep, it'll
They've
become like the
moved on to
lowest spec.
something that's completely different, or
Yes.
completely tarnishes whatever it is that you bought maybe 4 years ago. It makes it almost obsolete, and so you've got to keep buying, which is why companies like Apple and all keep doing so well, because guess what, the iPhone that you bought worth $1,000 back in 4 years ago, for example,
Mm-hmm.
the iPhone 10 is now basically like nothing. It's like, oh,
Like
you bought it
invalid.
that time. Yeah, exactly, because the amount of progress that they've made with the latest iPhone is suddenly something that's exponentially greater
Mm-hmm.
in
Yeah.
comparison. Yeah, it runs apps way more smoothly, and then you realize, hey, my iPhone is starting to slow down. Or that app doesn't run as well as it used to, and I think that's unfair to the customer, but you can understand it from computer manufacturer's point of view, because that is
Mm-hmm.
just how the industry is shaped, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true.
But I've got a bone to pick with you about consoles. Why do you think consoles is such a bad buy? I think that when I'll put forward my argument here, and then I'll give you time to respond. Well, that sounds very very professional, doesn't it? So here's my take on it. You buy a gaming console, and the gaming console generally has got chips that are made specifically for that gaming console, and then you can't get it on a laptop. So, for example, you've got PS4, PS5, and the Xbox running something called a Jaguar chip, if I'm not mistaken, by AMD. And so this has got fantastic integration of graphics processing and also, central processing, both integrated into your central processing unit. So I think this can be considered an SoC, where you have both graphics and general processing put into one chip. And so when you do something like that, you can actually get the price way lower than what you would get, for similar performance or even better performance on a laptop. So what I'm trying to say is, if you want to get a graphics card that processes games as well as something that a PS5 would, as well as, I mean, as good as a PS5 would, you are going to pay something like $1,000, or maybe even more with the current CPU demand that there is, and the CPU shortage also that there is, while you're paying what, $500 for an entire console, an entire device that can run things, run YouTube, help you in your both your gaming and also non-gaming experience, entertainment such as news, watching general TV, Netflix, YouTube, and the like. Whereas you're paying way much more for that if you are up for a laptop or something, and you're paying that much just for the graphics card. You're
Mm-hmm.
paying that much just for the graphics card, whereas you get a full set that can run so many things almost as well as you get for almost as well as you would for that graphics card that you bought that costs way more.
Yeah,
So
so I
that's
think
my
that,
main problem with it.
yeah, I think console is obviously cheaper than the PCs, but I like PC because it gives me a feeling that I am much more connected to the game, I would say, given that, I mean, to be honest, since when I was a child, I'm totally like a PC guy. I've never even seen a PS4 until I entered secondary school. I was that bad. like lacking in technology, right? So when I look at the PS4, I feel like it just focuses on one thing. Yeah, I do understand you can get all the entertainment part, but then when you buy the PS4, the shopkeeper or the retailer will also say that if possible, avoid doing other stuff beside the gaming. But then when you're buying a PC, no one is going to say that because PC is already made for other stuff as well. I mean, for mine also, it is a gaming laptop, but it is also capable to do other stuff as well. Like I can smoothly go through the YouTube videos and not just YouTube video, like technically any other difficult stuff that I want to do, right? Like editing videos, editing our audio
Hmm.
and stuff. So I do think that in that sense, I like PC much better. First of all, I feel much more connected to what I'm doing. Second, it gives me much more room to explore.
Well, my question would be at what cost though? Because you're getting something that's way more expensive than something like a PS5. And see, this is let me try and lay it down in simple terms of put it in something that's easier to understand. You can get, for example, a gaming console as well as a laptop without a graphics card for the same price that you would get, or for the same price, or even cheaper than you would get a laptop, which can, and both of them would give you equal performance, or even better performance than what your laptop can give you for less money.
The performance part, I'm not sure technically.
And that's one thing. And then another thing is you said that that people advise you not to do stuff like YouTube and stuff like that on consoles. I don't. I kind of disagree, because otherwise, why would you have YouTube on PS5? If the company didn't make it for that purpose, it's meant to be for that purpose. Maybe when you said that they tell you to use it only for games, they
Mhm.
meant to use it. Don't hack it or something like that. Maybe don't download Windows on your PS5. Don't
Yeah,
download Windows on your
possible.
PS4. Possibly, because otherwise, companies promote these entertainment or gaming consoles for the entertainment that they have as well. It's like a bonus. Hey, I got a gaming console, but it can do this. It can play Blu-ray discs. You can play movies on it. You can
Mhm.
watch movies on it. You can browse the internet on it. But well, you can't run Microsoft Word on it, which is what I'm saying, which is what I believe. Which is what I believe people will tell you when you buy it. Don't go download Windows on it, or try and download some next level engineering software on it for
And
whatever
do
course that you're
programming
doing.
on PS4 and
Yeah, do
PS5.
programming. Exactly. Yeah. So that's where I'm coming from.
So yeah, I do agree with that. I'm not gonna disagree. Like it's totally true. But then I also feel that PC is much more enhanced, like much more developed. I mean, look at the latest graphic card we got in Nvidia. It's RTX 3090. And even though you can't buy it, it is way too developed. You can play games in 8K. I mean, come on. The maximum that you can see in most of the TV screens nowadays are
Just
4K.
4K. Yeah.
Yes, but now it's already 8K. So far, PS5 don't have 8K and Xbox also don't have 8K. So I feel that PC develops much faster than the consoles, which also causes the price increase. And I don't mind with that. Talking about RTX 3090, right? I think I should explain some of the specs as well. It has 10,496 CUDA cores, which is in my opinion, it's the core for the performance of the graphic card. And then it also got 24 gigabyte of memory size. Let me tell you the difference. Currently, I'm using the RTX 2060, right? Mine is only 6 gigabyte of RAM. That's technically a very drastic difference. And it also comes with DLSS, which is the deep learning super sampling, where the graphic card itself will work as an artificial intelligence device. So it will learn as the game or whatever you're doing goes on. So let's say, I think I'll stick with games. Like you're playing a game, for example, Call of Duty, and you're going through a new map, and it will know itself when to enhance a certain particle or whatever you're focusing on. And also
Right.
the R in front, which is the ray tracing, right? Good thing is
Yeah.
that nowadays consoles also coming up with ray tracing. Yeah, it's a good thing. But then these graphic cards in PC already had ray tracing like a few years back. Ray tracing is when the light reflects or refracts and you can portrayed exactly in the screen that you're looking at. So I think that because PC is much more faster in the development, it is having a higher price. And as I said just now, I do agree with that. I don't mind having any I don't have any problems with it.
You don't have a problem paying higher price for newer technology, given the fact that maybe 2 years, 3 years down the line, it might potentially be obsolete. And I mean, to be fair, that is the case, or
Mm-hmm.
that was the case for a long time. Now I can't say for sure, but it is reasonable to assume that whatever amount that you pay today might be considered almost worthless tomorrow.
Yeah,
So
but then
why?
that is also comes with inflation, and I don't want to go into that for now.
Well, I mean, you're looking at the experience of it, then I think. So you're willing to do it for the experience, to
Yes.
enjoy what it has to offer and being the first
Mm-hmm.
to get there, I suppose.
I think if I have to give an advice to the person that want to buy another device, I think these two important stuff which will bring us to the main point. First is the CPU, and second is the long-term function of the device. So think
Mm.
about these two things before you purchase a new device.
Yeah,
So
very true.
yeah, go through the CPU because it's the center anyways. And then
Mhm.
because Karen also said just now, right, in another 2 years it's going to be totally obsolete, which I totally agree. It is going to happen
Potentially,
anyways. Yeah.
potentially, but I mean, it depends. The more expensive you go, or the higher you go in terms of pricing, then you there is a chance that you can sell it for maybe half price or slightly higher than that.
Mm-hmm.
But as a rule of thumb, let's say you buy something that's completely cheap, you're not going to get much when you sell it. And when I say cheap, I'm talking about I'm saying in comparison to things that are more expensive. So when I say cheap, it's not really cheap. It's it can be $1,000 or maybe more or less. It can be 1,000 ringgit. We are in Malaysia, right? So
Mm-hmm.
or I'm in Malaysia. You're not. Some things like that. It's very relative, and yeah, there's a lot to consider,
But then
really.
we are also in this rabbit hole that despite the price, the development is going to be there always. Like
Mhm.
it is going to develop despite all the disadvantage due to the consumer demand and also the competition among the manufacturers. And as much as this technology develops, right, the disadvantage that we get from it is also a lot. Given that during this COVID situation, some people need to take online classes, work from home and stuff. They
Mhm.
need to face the screen all the time. And whether you are having a very bad panel or very good panel, you are going to ruin your eyes anyways. So what do you think about it? Do
Mhm.
you think that the need for development is totally necessary despite the disadvantage, or you can alter something about it?
No, I think that it is. You can't really alter anything because we're only going one way from now, and that is hybrid or completely online. Once we've proved the fact that you can actually operate, from a you can operate from a completely online based platform in doing learning, working, and stuff like that. Once people have already realized that it is possible, and
Mm-hmm.
so once we've come to that point, you can't go back and suddenly say, hey, it wasn't possible, because people have already seen that it works, and it works reasonably well, given that you have the infrastructure and the capability to run that you're doing, whatever your work is related to, as long as it fits into the framework, it works. And so there is no going back from now. uh, and it's only just gonna go upwards from here. So the one thing that I'd only consider from now on is just watching after your health, looking after your health, because staring in front of a screen for too long isn't something that's healthy. And so technology that helps reduce eye strain, things like that, is definitely going to be something that I'll be happy to see, and I think should be given importance. Speaking of, you know, limiting your time on devices,
Mm-hmm.
China has cut down gaming time to just 3 hours a week,
Oh.
and this applies for kids. This applies to kids who spend too long gaming, and so this is, I think what I'm trying to, a good example of what I meant, in the sense that while there is no turning back, we are only going to see more and more demand for technology in your work or in your studies and whatnot. There should also be the realization that when you do something like this, it's not necessarily healthy, even though that's where everyone is going. And so the sooner you realize that going out is actually important, the sooner you realize that looking at green things to release eye stress, and not just sitting like a potato on a seat and
Yeah, don't be a
staring in front
potato,
of your
guys.
work all day. Yeah, don't be a couch potato.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not going to be a healthy thing. And so I think this move by China is one that can potentially get a lot of people to realize that there's much more than than just sitting down and
Gaming.
gaming as a form of stress release. That shouldn't be the only way that you release stress.
But surprisingly, like as much as I understand where China is coming from, I don't totally agree with them, because when you set a specific rule, as in reduce the gaming time to just 3 hours a week, I do think that our millennials will tend to break it even more. Like, who even follows the rules? I mean, not the legal rules. I mean, like anything that your parents say, the teachers say, you will try to find the loophole in it. And I think it will apply to this case as well.
And it's interesting that you say that. Once you found out that it is a loophole, then you realize that it can potentially be found out by someone else. If you found it, then definitely someone else can find it. And so
Yeah.
once you realize that your time there is potentially limited, then it becomes more like an addiction, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's true. Because now you want to do it like even more. The enthusiasm for you is even more
Yeah,
even more
exactly.
enhanced. You want to do it very badly now. Every week you are just waiting for the specific time of the day.
And also there's a feeling that it will run out eventually, right?
Yes, and you feel super insecure about it.
So yeah, that is reasonable. Yeah. I get where you're coming from.
Yeah, but then when you see countries that don't have this kind of laws, right? I do understand people that need to sit in front of screen for their work, for their classes. But what do people do after that? After the class finish, play games, watch YouTube, watch Twitter, use Instagram. They're going back to the same routine, right?
Not really a healthy lifestyle. Yeah,
Yeah,
no, not at
so
all.
if you guys are blaming about the online classes and work from home, I think you should blame your usage of social media and other stuff as well. So when
Mm.
you are done with your classes or your work, just get off the place that you're sitting at, just go outside and just
Yeah,
look at some
get a
stuff.
breather.
Just simply, yeah, get a breather and just randomly look at stuff. Just look at something that's very far away. It is still very
Yeah,
good for your health than just looking at something that is brightly lit, like few centimeters away from you.
very true. Well, we've covered a lot today, haven't we?
Yeah, that's very true.
Well, what did you think of our first episode? I think that is absolutely fantastic. It's great to finally get the ball rolling, like we mentioned earlier, and finally come up with something that's very interesting to talk about. And I'm looking forward to future episodes.
Yeah, I think it was a totally great episode. It is still a good start, in my opinion.
Yeah, sure. So what's next? I think, both of us were in science stream, so we are looking forward to talking about, streaming in Form 4 and in Form 5 for the Malaysian education system, teaching methods, what works best, what students should look at in order to get good marks in exams, and what they should realize when studying before it's too late.
Because yeah, that's one of the main issues that millennials are facing nowadays. Yeah, I think it's a good topic.
Yeah, very true. So we hope that you'll catch us in our next episode. Thanks so much for joining us. Have a great day.
And also, don't forget to drop a DM in our Instagram page if you wish to give any review about it. Thank you very much.